I wanted to bring on the show today a good friend of mine, Simon Whitelocke, who is the president of ITC Michigan. And today, well, it's not exactly a happy day. It's just anniversary day. 20 years ago today, August 14th, I guess that'd be 2003. There was the big East Coast power outage. And so we were just talking about before we came on the show. At the time, I was living in Grand Rapids, and my server was in the East, so I lost MITech News. But I didn't lose power. But over here on Southeast Michigan, that was a whole different story. And so you guys started in 2003 as well. And it was just a few months later that happened. So since then, you guys were instrumental in figuring out what the causes were. And also you put in a lot of efforts towards increasing reliability of the transmission grid to replace the likelihood of something similar happening in the future. Keep our fingers crossed, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about I introduced Simon. He's been on the show, 3-4 times, I think, haven't you?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so I've gone helicopter riding with them on occasion as we check the transmission lines. But let's sort of define. I always assume everybody doesn't understand what you guys do. And what you guys do is you don't generate the power. However, you transmit the power. So quick explanation on that. Sure.
Well, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate being on, and it is a pretty auspicious day in our industry. ITC is a transmission-only company, and when we talk about transmission, what that means is that the power system is in three parts. There's the generation, the transmission, and the distribution. And where the electricity is generated, it then gets carried over these high voltage transmission lines, and then eventually gets distributed into our homes and businesses. And as ITC is a transmission-only company, what that means is we just focus on transmission only, and we do it well. So we build, maintain, operate the transmission infrastructure that holds that three-part system together, essentially moving power like highways move cars across the roads. And of course, you're a spin-out from DTE 20 years ago. Talk a little bit about that. Sure, yeah. So this is also our 20th anniversary as a company. We got our start back in 2003 in March when DTE spun off its transmission business, and that created ITC. So yeah, it's a big year for us. 20 years in business, and just a few months later, we had that Northeast blackout of 2003. Yeah. So, and you're also part of a much bigger operation that I think the parent company is one of the biggest transmission companies in the States. Yes. Right. So ITC is, we're located in 8 states. So Michigan and other parts of the Midwest and Great Plains. So we have a pretty significant purview across the multiple regions. We can spot trends from our vantage point, and that gives us, I think, a unique perspective in terms of transmission infrastructure, policy, what's coming at us, what's needed down the road. All right. So where were you in the big blackout? I'm not sure. Obviously, you weren't working for ITC at that time. Where were you at that time? I was working for ITC. Oh, you were? Yeah. Okay. That's one of those, you're right. It's one of those things where you if you experienced it, you'll never forget it. And I was working at ITC that afternoon, and it was just on the job for a couple months at that point. And it was one of those events, I think, when it happened, I and many others probably thought, oh, maybe this is a terrorist attack, because it was not long after 9/11. But word quickly spread within the company that it was not caused by terrorism. And I think we understood, oh, wow, this is much bigger than just something local. It was, in fact, heading into New York and parts of Canada. So pretty broad event. But not only was I new to the company, but fairly new to the industry also. So I don't think I quite grasped the magnitude and the significance of the problem at first.
And I've heard lots of stories about trees falling on limbs and things, or on the power lines and whatnot. What was the actual cause of that? I never did find out for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that the precipitating event is one of those things where there are several things that happened all at the same time. I've heard an analogy. It's like, Swiss cheese, thousands of slices of Swiss cheese lined up, and there just happens to be a hole that goes all the way through. But I think the precipitating event was that high voltage lines, so transmission lines, sagged with it was a hot day, hot temperatures, a lot of electricity flowing over the lines. What happens is they start to sag, and sagged into a tree in Ohio. And that was sort of the beginning of the cascading event. And actually, even though we were brand new as a company, we quickly realized that we need to figure out what's going on here. So we had several employees who were watching this as it happened, and then a whole bunch of other engineers and others really came to work quickly after that and figured out what went wrong. And so they were able to piece together, using various system data, exactly what the cause was. And I think we weren't the only ones doing the same thing, but we were the first ones to really come through with a detailed explanation of what happened. So what should have been just a small local event cascaded into something much larger. And as we know, I think it disrupted so many lives in terms of businesses and other things. And I think it really highlighted the importance of what we were doing as a company. I personally was working in the financial area of the company at the time, and I watched with great interest. But I quickly realized how important the work that we do for society is on a daily basis.
Well, even more so now. Everybody's got electricity for everything, from internet to smartphones to, gosh, you name it, right? So
yes.
So the blackout probably taught the industry a lot. And in your opinion, what's the most important thing that was learned from the blackout?
Well, I think, to take a step back for a sec, that recognizing that when the grid was first built, so when the US was first electrified, it was really done on a city by city basis without this broader connection between these systems. So you had, each town or city would build its own little grid, and eventually those smaller grids became connected. So it really showed us how local customers are affected by a regional and the national grid. And many of the findings from our report ended up shaping some of the policies in our industry. So it just changed forever how we view reliability and the need to put a lot of safeguards in place. So we went from really having an honor system among utilities in terms of reliability standards and maintenance practices to having enforceable national mandatory reliability standards. We also focused a lot more on regional coordination, so region to region coordination. And then also we learned that we need to plan for this kind of stuff to happen. We hope it doesn't happen. We do everything we can to mitigate the risk of a blackout happening. But if one does happen, what are we going to do to restore power? Because there could be many different causes. So that's something that we do. We have annual restoration drills. We practice, what to do in case something goes wrong. I think it also showed us that we need to do more in terms of transmission. So the grid that we acquired back in 2003 had been largely built decades before that. And we realized, we really need to beef up the grid that we had here in Michigan and the rest of our systems. And since then, we've really done a lot to invest in the grid, improve the reliability on a day-to-day basis. And today, as a result of all that investment and ongoing maintenance, our transmission system is among the most reliable in the US. And we're routinely benchmarking the top 25%, sometimes even the top decile in North American benchmarking surveys. So I think kind of the focus on the day-to-day nitty-gritty reliability has really proven itself out.
Yeah, it seems the grid has certainly been on the minds of a lot of folks lately, particularly, here in Southeast Michigan, where multiple storms have brought it down for one reason or another. But it's also on the minds of the folks at the federal level. So what's happening there?
Well, yes, I think you mentioned the weather. Our systems have actually performed remarkably well. So I remember that there's a three-part system, and fortunately, the transmission system, which can have a significant impact on local, has been performing well here in Michigan. And I think we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. We certainly help our neighbors out when we have had some of these storms. I think in terms of the federal policy, there's a lot going on right now. I think there's been a lot of talk about we've seen the Inflation Reduction Act is one example where that's really created a lot of certainty. We've seen a lot of renewable development and other activities that have really increased, as well as the transmission planning recognition. So there are other entities that help plan the transmission system. I think that's really given a lot of clarity to the future. I think things that we thought were needed 5 or 10 years ago, others maybe weren't seeing, are now sort of common wisdom in the industry. And, really the talk about the need for expanded transmission systems. So essentially thinking about, if the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining here in Michigan, how are we going to get power from somewhere else? We needed stronger ties and the transmission system to do that.
Well, it's certainly you're going to have a lot of demand moving forward with the big push on electric vehicles. I mean, the governor wants to see 1 million electric vehicles in Michigan in the next 6 or 8 years. I asked her that question at a recent news conference, and she kind of ducked it. But I mean, it's like, I know you guys are working really hard to make sure that happens. I'm sure DTE and consumers is as well. But in terms of energy goals, what's your really big energy goal for whatever time frame you want to use?
Well, we're focused on really meeting, helping others meet their goals. So the governor has goals, our utility customers have goals for decarbonization, and that's really what we do, is we facilitate those goals being met. So we recognize the need for transmission in order for our customers to meet their goals. So I think that's really how we sort of set our sights. And I think our job is to point out what's needed for them to meet their goals. And that's how we engage with our customers. That's how we engage on the policy front, whether it be regulatory or legislatively.
All right. And so I'm running late on time here. We're just about done with the segment. So if folks want to find out, can folks reach out to you directly, Simon, if they have suggestions or questions or anything like that?
Yeah, we have a great website, ITC-holdings.com. A lot of great information there, as well as ways to contact the company. We're always looking to engage with folks and who are looking to learn more or have ideas or suggestions. So please visit our website.